And welcome to Music 101. Music 101 is created to empower music itself and legendary iconic music industry. Another week, another great episode. Rich Derringer, dead at 77, rock and roll hoochie coo, guitarist, and hang on, Sloopy hitmaker dies.
Yeah, so not to be morbid, but yeah, we're losing more folks, and Rick passed away. So we want to put a tribute in. He's the McCoys frontman and prolific session musician who worked with Ian Hunter, Edgar Winter, Steely Dan, and countless rock legends over a 5-decade career. So we want to give him a tribute.
Yes, Mr. Rick Derringer. Thank you so much for your legacy to go on. Mr. Rick Derringer worked with many artists, but why don't we start with this collaboration with Ian Hunter? Your favorite.
Yeah, that is my favorite. Someone like me even wrote a book about him. So that's where I was going because Rick Derringer released an album called King Biscuit Flower Hour Presents Rick Derringer and Friends in 1998. And Ian Hunter appeared on it. Numerous luminaries appeared on that famous series of live concerts, including, in this instance, Derringer, of course, on guitar and vocals, Daryl Hall and John Oates, vocals, Dr. John, and Edgar Winter. That album featured Ian Hunter on 2 tracks, Just Another Night, which was first released by Ian Hunter in 1979, but Rick Derringer and Friends featuring Ian Hunter released their version on the album as well. Derringer has a stellar solo album, and it's actually, I think, one of the best versions that Hunter has ever released of the song, thanks to Rick. The second track was a medley composed of All the Young Dudes, Roll Away the Stone, Honolulu Boogie, a reprise of Roll Away the Stone, Ships, and reprise of All the Young Dudes. This unusual medley of Hunter related songs is odd since Ian never performed that medley before or since, so it's a unique release in addition to having Derringer on guitar. This was a live album from the famous King Biscuit Flower Hour radio show series, which was one of the most popular concert shows of the time. The collaboration makes perfect sense given both artists' connections to the classic rock scene of the 1970s and their shared history in the rock world. Ian Hunter from Mott the Hoople and his solo career, Rick Derringer from his solo career, and work with various artists. So, in conclusion, that album represents the kind of cross generational rock collaboration that defined much of Derringer's later career.
Mr. Mick, what kicked off Rick Derringer's journey to rock stardom?
Derringer grew up mostly in Ohio, and ironically enough, the state is also associated with Ian Hunter because Hunter wrote Cleveland Rocks, which has been associated with the state since then. I was a natural, Rick Derringer says, dispensing of any pretense of modesty. He's recalling the time when, at 9 years old in 1956, the year of Elvis, he calls it, he got his first real guitar, a Harmony type model with one pickup, and a copy of Mickey Baker's complete course in jazz guitar, and how, on his first night, he was off and running. Right away, I was playing chord sequences like a pro. I was totally hooked, and it all came very easily to me. I know some people hate to hear that, but I was just blessed by the good Lord with the ability to play anything I heard. Within weeks, Derringer, or as he was known then, Rick Zerringer, was playing country western tunes in bars in and around his hometown of Fort Recovery, Ohio, with his uncle Jim, a singer and guitar player. It seemed like the most normal thing in the world, Derringer says. What wasn't normal, at least to me, was the money we made. The first time I played a gig, they passed a hat around and I made $43. This was in the 1950s, so that was a lot of money at the time. Country western days were fine for a while, but rock and roll was exploding, and Derringer was enthralled by all the new sounds he heard. The first record I bought was by Buddy Holly, which of course had electric guitar on it, he says. Then there was electric guitar on all the Elvis records. Suddenly, the electric guitar came of age, and it was being used as a lead instrument. People became famous because they could play guitar. You could have a career as a guitar player. That's what I wanted. Ironically, Derringer learned slide guitar from Johnny Winter, whose brilliance with the instrument preceded Duane Allman's by a scant few years. Derringer's slide guitar playing shows in his later work with Steely Dan. What Derringer learned, though, he passed also on to Duane Allman. Allman exclaimed, "You were the person that made me think. Wow, that slide can make some real good rockin' music. In 1975, Rick Derringer related how he inspired the Allman Brothers, Dwayne Allman, to become the greatest slide guitarist in rock. Derringer and Winter met in 1969 while Derringer was with the McCoys at the age of just 17. He realized that he needed a band, and after the Zerringers, Rick's real name, family moved to Union City, Indiana, he formed his first outfit with his brother, Randy, on drums and a neighbor, Richard Kelly, on bass. The group went through a succession of names. First, there was the McCoys, inspired by a song called The McCoy, the B side of the Venture's hit single, Walk Don't Run. And next came Rick and the Raiders. Briefly, they were also the Rick Z combo until they finally went back to the McCoys. With Derringer fronting the band, the McCoys played around the Midwest and cut a single called You Know I Love You that received some regional airplay. By 1965, they scored a number one single with their vibrant remake of Hang On Sloopy, which had been a hit as My Girl Sloopy in 1964 by an R&B group called The Vibrations. The Yardbirds with Jeff Beck also cut a version, but Rick was not familiar with that track when the McCoys recorded their version. There's some confusion about this track, but it was clarified by Derringer. Some claim that Rick recorded the lead vocal on Hang On Sloopy over backing tracks by a group called the Strangeloves. It doesn't credit him as playing guitar. Rick responded in an interview. That's wrong information. I played all the guitar on Hang On Sloopy, including the solo. I sang lead and I also sang as part of the group. The Strangeloves were music producers, shysters actually, from New York City, and they were in the business of cheating people. They did that very well, but they didn't play guitar. His spectacular solo was inspired. Rick states, that was in one take. They said, now it's time to play the solo. I played it, and that was it. Just came up with it on the spot. Although the song only spent 1 week at number one, it became an anthem in Ohio, adopted as the state's official rock song and played during Cleveland Guardians, Browns, and Cavaliers games. In conclusion, the Ohio and the Ohio State University marching bands have regularly played the song at football games since 1965.
Mr. Mick, musically, what was the era like and what happened after the early stardom of Hang On, Sloopy?
Derringer relates, people always ask me, was it an exciting time? And I say, yes, of course it was, Derringer says. It's difficult for me to have an outside perspective on it because I was on the inside and I was doing it. Here I was, 17 years old, and I was in a successful band with a hit record, and we were playing all over the world. I was so happy. Rick continues, I opened for the Rolling Stones on their very first American tour. And of course, we received the same adulation the Stones would get. People ask me, did you see what it was like to be a Beatle? Well, I already knew what it was like to be a Beatle. I had the number one record in the world, while Yesterday by the Beatles was number two. Did I know what it was like to be the Beatles? I was the Beatles in some form. I grew up like that. By the decade's final year, the McCoys' career was in a tailspin. Rick and his brother Randy, who played drums in the McCoys, hooked up with Winter in the group Johnny Winter, where Derringer added his considerable guitar firepower to Winter's own. Rick was frustrated at the time. He stated, the label didn't stop us, but we were known as a bubblegum group, which wasn't a good connotation. Before Sloopy, we played R&B, soul, jazz, lots of different kinds of music. We looked at ourselves as a quality musical group, and suddenly we were pigeonholed in a genre we didn't feel good about. As soon as our contract with FGG Productions was up, it wasn't with Bang Records, we chose to get out. Now, Bert Burns, the president of Bang Records, he was a pretty good guy. He came to me and said, if you want to continue with Bang Records and not with those guys, I'll show you how much money they're cheating you out of and make sure that you get a fair shake. Well, we said, no, we've got to get away from this whole thing. We got a contract from Mercury, and they allowed us to do anything we wanted. We were on Mercury when I met Johnny Winter. That was the opportunity to get out of that whole genre. By the end of the decade, the McCoys' career came to a close, and Rick Zerringer became Rick Derringer. But the guitarist's fortunes rebounded quickly. With the McCoys, he teamed with rising blues star Johnny Winter. That was the start of what really became my destiny, Derringer says. I had no idea of what might lie ahead for me, but now that I look back on it, the records I've made and the people I've played with, and it's pretty remarkable. He laughs, and I was there for every second of it. Derringer was transitioning out of McCoy's, and there was an indication he was on his way out. Rick played slide guitar on Alice Cooper's 1971 Killer LP on the track Under My Wheels. That was the lead single, and it became one of Alice Cooper's signature songs. The tune hit number 59 on the Billboard Hot 100. In conclusion, Derringer was about to shed the bubblegum tag that was applied to him at the time for more mainstream rock.
Mr. Mick at the time connecting with Johnny Winter must have seemed like a left curve to fans. True?
Rick answered, "It probably was, but it gained me so many other fans." Johnny Winter was signed to the biggest record contract in the history of the music business at that time. He was well received, so suddenly I was playing with a legit guy. That opened the doors for me. He asked me to produce his records. Now, the thing about his big contract, the label forgot that he was a blues guitar player. Blues didn't sell that many records to warrant so much money. In order to change that situation, they said he has to be more rock oriented. That's where I came in to bring the rock and roll. The McCoys came with me to join Johnny, but we couldn't use that name because it had negative connotations. So the band became Johnny Winter and from the beginning in 1970, right from the opening song, Guess I'll Go Away, Rick and Johnny were dangerous on stage. Derringer states, "We had fun," he laughed. "It was a contest every night to see who could play the best. They were blending guitar tones and competing. Johnny and Rick shared credit for their success," Derringer noted. "If we're talking about albums, I would make the rules because I was the producer. If it was live, we didn't have any specific rules. Now, I understand from other people that play with other artists that they've been given rules about what and how much they're allowed to play. We didn't have anything like that." Johnny was very generous about sharing his blues knowledge. He showed me specific things I didn't know, tunings and slide guitar. It wasn't because he wanted me to know these things. I asked him. I said, "Help me with these things." In conclusion, Derringer stepped up his game to mainstream rock with Johnny Winter.
Mr. Saul, did Derringer have reservations about Johnny's take on recording his songs rock and roll hoochie coo?
Rick expands his thoughts. "No, as a matter of fact, that's what I was getting at before. The first thing I did was make sure the music was more commercial, more rock oriented. I wrote Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. The rock was me, and the Hoochie Coo was Johnny. He was the band leader, so we did it his way. The first opportunity I had it to do my way was on my first solo album, All American Boy. We had a great time playing, Johnny and me. It was a kind of competition. Winter had shown him the basics of slide playing well before the McCoys had broken up, and he had begun to put his new skills to use. The Derringer Penn song Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo became a signature tune for Winter 3 years before Derringer recorded it for his solo album in 1973. In conclusion, Johnny Winter and Rick competed, but eventually Johnny got tired of trying to compete, so he disbanded that group, and that's when Derringer started playing with Edgar Winter's White Trash.
Mr. Mick, how did Johnny feel when Derringer went off to play with his brother Edgar? Was there any weirdness about the situation?
By then, Johnny had become engrossed in the drug world and checked himself into rehab. Suddenly, there was no touring, and that ended the band. Derringer joined his brother Edgar's band, and he produced Edgar Winter's White Trash. That's when he started playing with White Trash live. Derringer produced Edgar's They Only Come Out at Night, which featured two big hits. Free Ride was written by Dan Hartman and became a top 15 U.S. hit in 1973, reaching number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100. Ronnie Montrose played solo as well. Ronnie played the solos on the album version of Free Ride. Derringer played lead guitar on the single version. There certainly were some dynamics in the collaboration. Montrose was very inventive and had a good sense of humor. According to Derringer, Ronnie was a brave guy, and Edgar was a very planned out, nerdy kind of musician. He wanted the things the same time, every time, and Ronnie was the total opposite. The second song of note on the record was Frankenstein, which topped the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 chart for 1 week in May 1973, making it an even bigger hit than Free Ride. Frankenstein was a notable song from my first job at a drive in dairy in Lakewood, California. The song has a strange middle section that sounds like a flying saucer is landing. My fellow workers and I would turn it up loud and pretend that we heard nothing while the customers looked baffled by the sound. Oh, to be young and foolish again. Fortunately, the customers took it all in stride and no one complained, or I'm sure the management at the conservative business would not have been pleased. Interestingly, Free Ride was initially released as the first single from the album, but went nowhere and was only re released successfully after Frankenstein went to number one. As producer, Derringer, he managed Ronnie Montrose, deciding on what worked or just let him go. Rick advises, I never showed him anything specific. For instance, on Frankenstein, it was like, here's the guitar solo section, take off. He'd do his thing, and it was fine with everything he played. Same thing on Free Ride. It was, here's your part, just play lead guitar. In conclusion, Derringer enjoyed a successful time with Edgar Winter, scoring big hits.
Mr. Mick, in 1973, Derringer released his debut solo album, All American Boy, and forged a new direction, correct?
True enough, soon after his success with Edgar Winter, Derringer had a hit with All American Boy and a version of rock and roll Hoochie Coo. The guitar solo is strikingly different from the one done with Johnny Winter. In this case, Derringer confirmed the difference in an interview. Those are two totally different records. The one I did with Johnny was more in keeping with his style. When I did my version, it was my opportunity to play and create what I thought it could be. I went for it. The album featured his biggest solo hit, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. The song cracked the top 40, peaking at number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100, and has enjoyed a long life since as a classic rock radio staple. On the cover of All American Boy, he posed with a red Stratocaster. Derringer clarified, that was a photo by the Japanese photographer Hiro. It wasn't even my guitar, it was Johnny Winter's. He gave it to me because he didn't like it. We used it for the cover because it matched the clothing and everything. The silver and red, we thought the guitar looked cool. In conclusion, with the release of his first solo record, Derringer was a hot prospect.
Hot prospect indeed. Around this time, Mr. Mick, Derringer began appearing on a lot of other artists' records. Were they looking for anything in particular, or did they call solely based on reputation?
Rick related in interviews what the procedure was. He advised that it was pretty simple. They would ask, could you come into the studio today and record something for me? Derringer lived in Manhattan and he would agree. And that's all there was to it. There were so many great guitar players worldwide, but they didn't live right down the street from the studio. So availability kept him busy as a hot guitarist. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Derringer continued to release albums under his name and as the group Derringer. As a session player, he played on several Steely Dan favorites, Showbiz Kids, Chain Lightning, and My Rival. Showbiz Kids and Derringer's slide guitar are pretty much the stars of the song. Steely Dan said they wanted slide guitar, and they wanted similar things to what Rick had played with Johnny Winter. They didn't determine the parts, though. Derringer just created the parts. The solo on Chain Lightning almost sounds like a couple of different players coming in after each other, but it was all Derringer. He did that whole solo. Rick had a good relationship with Steely Dan, who were known to be punctilious and demanding of studio players. In the case of Steely Dan, Derringer played on Donald Fagen's demo that was eventually used to create Steely Dan. They knew of Rick, but then he was on the road during the making of their first album. Although he didn't do that record, he played a little something on almost every album after that, including Donald Fagen's solo record. His accessibility was important. He had the reputation of coming into the studio and playing whatever they wanted. Derringer continued with Steely Dan's Donald Fagen on his 1982 solo album, The Nightfly. That was quite an achievement in itself, since Walter Becker and Donald Fagen of Steely Dan had a reputation for being martinets and perfectionists in the studio. The collaboration was fruitful, and he didn't have to have a poor experience with them. They pretty much just played the song and said, here you go, Rick. We want it to be a blues kind of thing. Derringer also appeared with Todd Rundgren in Utopia. He worked on Another Live 1975, playing guitar on some live shows around this period and contributing to studio sessions. For Faithful, 1976, Derringer is rumored but not officially credited to have laid down some uncredited guitar parts during these sessions. Rundgren liked using guest players for certain textures. For Raw 1977, Derringer had live performance collaborations, but he isn't listed as a core studio contributor. Todd Rundgren did feature Rick, and may wonder if he had any specifics for what to play. Derringer advises it would depend on the song, I guess. We were friends, and I think he just wanted another name on the record. You know, I got Rick Derringer on there. I always enjoyed playing with him. On some songs, I would just play a harmony with a melody that he had already recorded, or in some cases, he would use me to go for it. Rick has been verified as the soloist on his song Dust in the Wind, where the lead is clean and the phrasing economical. For this, Rick states, yeah, I probably just went for it. It was spontaneous. Derringer also contributed to live shows with Rundgren. About the same time, Rick spent with Meatloaf performing live work on guitar on Meatloaf's live band during their famous Bat Out of Hell tour, late 1977, 1978. Derringer's hard rock edge complemented Jim Steinman's over the top compositions. In conclusion, Derringer contributed to the artists who appreciated him and his work.
Mr. Mick in 1978, Derringer gave a young hotshot named Neil Giraldo his start when he hired him for his band. Neil later connected with Pat Benatar. What is it like to mentoring him?
Something went right because Neil and Pat collaborated and got married. The pair sold 35 million albums worldwide, five of them platinum, and scored 15 top 40 singles along with four Grammy Awards. Derringer found Neil to be very useful on a couple of levels. He played really effective lead and rhythm guitar. Neil didn't always have to play lead because Derringer was in the band. Neil usually played rhythm, but he played good rhythm. When the duo went into the studio to record Guitars and Women, Rick found out that he was also a pretty good piano player, so he played some piano on that album. Mike Chapman was working on a record in the same studio. He called Derringer and said, Rick, would you mind if I use your guitar player on this record? Not thinking logically, he said, sure, why not? It turned out the record was by Pat Benatar. Neil and Pat met, and that was that. They became husband and wife, and the rest, they say, is history. In conclusion, Derringer's reputation as a solid producer and guitar player led to numerous gigs with other musicians.
Mr. Mick, didn't this period turn out to be a productive time for Derringer?
Indeed, it did. He also played with Cyndi Lauper on two of her solo albums. Lauper's biggest hit is Girls Just Want to Have Fun, 1983, which peaked at number two on the Billboard Hot 100 and became her signature song and enduring pop anthem. Derringer assisted on Cindy's two later solo albums, True Colors, 1986, and the title track were a number one hit on the Billboard Hot 100. Derringer was also on A Night to Remember, 1989. It was best known for I Drove All Night, which became a top 10 hit. With Lauper, he also joined her touring band. Rick was known during this time for playing the solos on some big power ballads. For example, he was on Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart. In 1983, it hit number one on the Billboard Hot 100. UK was number one singles chart, and he also hit number one in Canada, Australia, and several other countries. It was Tyler's biggest hit ever, staying at number one in the US for 4 weeks and becoming one of the defining power ballads of the 1980s. Tyler is the first Welsh artist to top the US charts. Rick also played for Air Supply's Making Love Out of Nothing at All. Derringer frequently worked on projects helmed by the celebrated songwriter and producer of Meatloaf, Jim Steinman, including this hit. It peaked at number two on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US and held number two spot for 3 weeks, kept out of one, ironically, by Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart, although both songs were written by Jim Steinman. So it also became one of Air Supply's signature power ballads and their last top 10 hit in the US. It's one of Derringer's favorite guitar solos. He related that he really enjoyed playing that solo. It has this kind of classical music beginning, but it's not me showing off. I'm just playing music. It's very heartfelt. I like it. Derringer also appeared on Barbra Streisand's Left in the Dark. Streisand's song of 1984 peaked at number 50 on the Billboard Hot 100 US chart from her album Emotion, which did better on adult contemporary charts, reaching number 9 there. It's another Jim Steinman composition like Bonnie Tyler's and Air Supply's big hits. Derringer and Steinman also spearheaded the World Wrestling Federation's 1985 soundtrack album, The Wrestling Album. Derringer famously composed and performed Hulk Hogan's theme song, Real American. Derringer also helmed the 1987 sequel record, Pile Driver, the wrestling album number 2. But throughout the 80s, the artist Derringer worked with most closely was Weird Al Yankovic. He produced Yankovic's first 6 wildly successful studio albums and won his first and only Grammy for Eat It, Rankovic's classic spoof of Michael Jackson's Beat It. Derringer was imitating Eddie Van Halen's original solo. According to Derringer, what's interesting is Eddie told us that he copied that style from listening to us. The guitar player in the Rick Derringer band was Danny Johnson, and I asked him to play with us because he's one of the first people I ever saw who did that style. That was one of the reasons he got the gig. Eddie Van Halen said he was a big fan of that band and he came to see us play regularly. Rick has been asked if Eddie ever told him what he thought of his solo with Weird Al, replying, he didn't. He never talked about it specifically. Eddie's brother, Alex, though, has commented more negatively. In a guitar player interview, Derringer admitted to having complicated feelings about his work with Yankovic. At first, he said people found his decision to work with Yankovic confusing, but Derringer didn't find it odd at all, having grown up with a family who loved novelty records by artists like Spike Jones. Derringer kept even remembering about his younger days. If we can make a success of his songs, it would have no competition because there wasn't anything like this stuff out at the time. Derringer took a leap of faith in producing his first album, Weird Al Yankovic, in 1983, paying out of pocket. There was no record company support at all. They made a great record and sold it to the label of Scotty Brothers. The Scotty Brothers were in the record promotion business and they had just started a record company. Other record companies wanted the album, but Rick told Al, if the Scotty Brothers will take it, you'll probably be cheated, but you'll probably be guaranteed of having a hit because these guys are good at what they do. They released it on the Scotty Brothers, and it was an instant hit. Al was at the advent of MTV. He knew what he was doing. Derringer only left him after 6 albums, 2 Grammys, and 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's done very well. But here's the bottom line. Derringer thought it would help his production career, but suddenly he became known as a novelty producer. As much as Derringer loved Weird Al, he's a good guy, very talented, and a hard worker. He single handedly ruined Rick's production career. By the end of the 1980s, Derringer had grown concerned that his work with Yankovic had placed him in a pigeonhole as a producer. In conclusion, despite keeping busy in the studio, Derringer's career had hit an impasse.
Mr. Mick, how about the 1990s and his touring work?
Derringer continued his prolific live output throughout the 90s and into the new millennium. He spent several years touring with Ringo Starr and his All Star Band. Many people, including Ian Hunter, have related how much fun it was to tour with Ringo. The touring band for Ringo and Rick included Gary Wright as the keyboard player. Edgar Winter was in the band. He played keyboards and sax. Wally Palmer from the Romantics was the other guitar player. It got a little awkward at one point. Rick's Hang On Sloopy was number 1, while Yesterday by the Beatles was number 2. On the tour, Derringer told that story for the first few shows, and then he'd play his song. After the third show, a roadie came up to me and he said, did you get permission from Ringo to tell that story? I said, no. Should I? And he said, you probably should. Rick went to Ringo's dressing room and was graciously admitted. Derringer told him, you've been sitting right there behind me every night and you've heard me tell that story. Is it okay with you? And he said, I didn't play on either of them. He laughed. That was his answer, so I guess it was okay. But then I limited my telling of that story just because I rethought it and said, I'm playing with Ringo. I don't really need to tell that anymore. The band also played Frankenstein, and Rick recreated Ronnie Montrose's part. The band played an extended version, so he didn't play it the same every night. Derringer was also featured on Peter Frampton's Guitar Circus tour. And having worked with Meatloaf's well-known touring band in the 1970s, he played again with him in the 1980s. Kiss also had Derringer contribute to their work. He played bass guitar on the song Exciter from Kiss's 1983 album, Lick It Up. Also, and to his later work, he released an album called Rock the Yacht, on which Rick and his wife, Jenda, share vocals. Despite title, it's more of a pop album with big ballads. Derringer relates, it's a progression of everything they had done up to that point. People would like me to continue playing the music that I played when I was a teenager or when I was in my 20s. They want me to rock and roll over and over like a young guy, but I'm not a young guy. I'm 76. We do grow older and our musical tastes change a little bit. Rock the Yacht reflects a new version of who Rick Derringer is, who he's become, and what the music is. I really enjoy it. You can get it anywhere that sells music. In conclusion, as for his later live and studio output, he often worked closely with his wife Jenda, doing everything from electric blues to contemporary Christian music.
So, Mr. Mick, how would you sum up Rick's career?
Rick Derringer's 6-decade career is a testament to his versatility and enduring passion for rock and roll. Rising to fame as a teenager prodigy with the McCoys, he scored a chart-topping hit with Hang On Sloopy in 1965, showcasing his knack for crafting infectious melodies. Derringer's journey didn't stop there. He transitioned to a prolific solo artist, releasing albums like All American Boy 1973, which featured his iconic rock and roll Hoochie Coo. His guitar prowess and songwriting finesse made him a sought-after collaborator, working with legends like Johnny Winter, Edgar Winter, and Steely Dan. Derringer's ability to blend blues, rock, and pop while maintaining a distinctive edge solidified his reputation as a dynamic force in music. Beyond his solo work, Derringer's collaborations highlight his chameleon-like adaptability across genres and eras, from producing and playing on Alice Cooper's Killer 1971 to contributing to projects with artists as diverse as Todd Rundgren, Cyndi Lauper, and Weird Al Yankovic. He consistently brought grit and innovation to the table. His work with the Winter Brothers, particularly on Edgar Winter's White Trash and They Only Come Out at Night, showcase his ability to elevate any project with searing riffs and his soulful energy. Even into the 2000s, Derringer remained active, releasing albums like Free Ride 2002 and performing with Ringo Starr's All-Star Band, proving his journeyman spirit never waned. In conclusion, his career marked by relentless creativity and collaboration cements him as a true rock and roll survivor.
True rock and roll indeed, Mr. Rick Derringer. Thank you so much for your legacy to the world. Derringer, whose career spanned over 6 decades, left an indelible mark on rock music as a virtuoso guitarist, songwriter, and producer, collaborating with the legends like Johnny Winter, Edgar Winter, and Steely Dan. Mr. Mike, would you like to plug in something?
I appreciate the opportunity. Connect with me on LinkedIn, create a valued book in 90 days. G.Mick, the Doctor of Digital, and also connect on Facebook, The Idea to Author Coach, and a couple volumes out there that you can pick up, both Burning America and On Track, Ian Hunter, available on Amazon. Listen to the Doctor of Digital podcast.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Mick, the Doctor of Digital, because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering books to come, and for sure, more empowering episodes of the podcast itself. And please do listen to our baby podcast, Mental Health 101. Mr. Mick, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, my friend. Until next time, Day is Soul.
More to come, people. See you soon.